There's a hole in the wall of apartment 4B on 135th Street. Small, round, perfectly preserved. For 20 years, tenants have walked past it, painted over it, ignored it. But that hole holds a secret that Harlem whispers about in the dark, because that hole was made by the bullet that created Bumpy Johnson. The year was 1931. The boy was 17, and what happened in that room over the next 4 hours didn't just end one life. It began a legend. October 15th, 1931. A freight train from Charleston pulled into Pennsylvania Station, carrying cargo the manifest didn't list, human cargo. Ellsworth Johnson, 5'9", 140 pounds, everything he owned wrapped in a brown paper sack. He had .347 in his pocket and a rap sheet from South Carolina that would have gotten him lynched if he'd stayed another day. Ellsworth wasn't running to New York. He was running from Charleston, from a white man's blood on his hands, from a rope with his name on it, from a past that would follow him north like a shadow, hungry for revenge. But the boy stepping off that train had no idea he was walking into a trap, had no idea that 3 men in a speakeasy on Lenox Avenue had been waiting for him, had no idea that news of what he'd done in Charleston had traveled faster than any freight train. The Harlem that Ellsworth found wasn't the Harlem Renaissance that history books remember. That was dying, crushed under the weight of the Depression. This Harlem was hungrier, meaner, more desperate, a place where young men disappeared and nobody asked questions, where blood dried quickly on pavement and life was cheaper than bootleg whiskey. Ellsworth walked the streets for 6 hours, looking for somewhere to sleep. Every flop house wanted money he didn't have. Every corner he turned, he felt eyes watching. By dawn, he understood something that would shape the next 37 years of his life. In Harlem, you don't ask for mercy, you take what you need, or you die wanting it. 6:23 a.m. The Lenox Social Club, a basement speakeasy that served rot-gut liquor and hosted high-stakes poker games. Ellsworth pushed through the door, drawn by the smell of coffee and the sound of laughter. He didn't know those laughs were about him. 3 men sat at a corner table, cards forgotten, eyes locked on the door. Willie Chains Morrison, 280 pounds of muscle wrapped in a cheap suit. Tommy DeMarco, a thin Italian with dead eyes who'd killed 6 men for the privilege of operating in Harlem. And Ray Coltrane, a local enforcer who collected debts with brass knuckles and enjoyed his work too much. They'd been waiting since midnight. Word from Charleston was clear. A black boy had killed a white sheriff's son. Money was on the table, $500 for the boy's head, dead or alive, but preferably dead. Ellsworth ordered coffee with money he couldn't afford to spend. The waitress, a tired woman named Dolores, slid the cup across the counter and whispered without looking at him, "Baby, you need to leave, right now." But it was already too late. Chains was standing, blocking the door. Tommy was reaching inside his jacket. Ray was smiling, that smile that meant someone was about to scream. "You're a long way from South Carolina, boy," Chains said. His voice filled the room like smoke. Ellsworth's hand tightened around the coffee cup. He'd learned something in Charleston, in that moment when he'd put a knife between a white man's ribs. Fear makes you stupid, but anger, cold anger, makes you dangerous. "Don't know what you're talking about," Ellsworth said. His voice was steady, calm. That surprised them. Tommy laughed, a sound like glass breaking. "Sheriff's boy sends his regards from the grave." That's when Ellsworth understood. This wasn't random. This wasn't bad luck. Someone had sold him. Someone in Charleston had made a phone call, collected a finder's fee, and marked him for death before he'd even left the state. $500, Ray said, brass knuckles appearing on his fingers like magic. "That's what your head's worth down south. Up here, we might make it last longer, for fun." The room went quiet. The few other patrons suddenly found their drinks fascinating. Dolores disappeared into the back room. Even the jazz from the radio seemed to fade, as if the music itself was holding its breath. Ellsworth stood slowly, set the coffee cup down with steady hands. When he looked up, something had changed in his face. The fear was gone. In its place was something colder, something calculating, "Y'all made a mistake," he said. Chains laughed. "What mistake is that, boy? You should have shot me when I walked in." What happened next lasted maybe 30 seconds. But those 30 seconds created a legend that Harlem would whisper about for decades. Ellsworth moved first. Not toward the door, toward Tommy. The gun was halfway out of the Italian's jacket when Ellsworth's fist connected with his windpipe. Not a wild swing, a precise strike, aimed to crush, to silence, to kill. Tommy went down, choking, gun skittering across the floor. Chains lunged forward, but Ellsworth was already moving, coffee cup shattering against the big man's skull, hot liquid and ceramic opening a gash above his eye. Ray came at him with the brass knuckles, swinging for his head. Ellsworth ducked, came up inside his reach, fingers finding Ray's throat, not choking, crushing. Ray's eyes went wide, then blank. Chains, blood streaming down his face, dove for Tommy's gun. His fingers closed around the grip. He rolled, came up firing. The first shot went wide, splintering wood above Ellsworth's head. The second shot found its mark. Not Ellsworth, Ray Coltrane, caught in the crossfire as Ellsworth spun him around like a shield. The bullet took Ray in the chest, punched through his heart, and buried itself in the wall behind him. The hole that would remain for 20 years. The hole that marked the exact moment Ellsworth Johnson died and Bumpy Johnson was born. Chains stared at Ray's body, at the blood spreading across the floor, at the boy who just used his friend as armor. His hand shook as he raised the gun again. "You killed him," Chains whispered. "No," Ellsworth said, stepping over Ray's body. "You did." The truth of it hit Chains like a physical blow. He'd fired the shot, his bullet, his gun, his dead friend, and this 17-year-old boy had orchestrated it like a chess master. That's when Chains saw it, the thing that made strong men cross the street when they saw Bumpy Johnson coming, the thing that would make Dutch Schultz hesitate, the thing that would earn Lucky Luciano's respect. It wasn't cruelty, it wasn't rage, it was calculation, cold, perfect, lethal calculation, the ability to see 3 moves ahead while bullets were flying, to turn an enemy's strength against them, to make them destroy themselves while believing they were winning. Chains dropped the gun. His hands were shaking too badly to hold it steady. "Please," he whispered, "I got family." Ellsworth picked up the gun, checked the cylinder. 4 bullets left. He looked at Tommy, still gasping on the floor, throat crushed but alive. Looked at Chains, tears mixing with blood on his cheeks. Looked at Ray's body, already growing cold. "So did he," Ellsworth said, nodding at Ray. "So did the man in Charleston. He could have killed them both. Should have, by every law of the street. Dead men don't collect bounties. Dead men don't call for backup. Dead men don't remember your face." Instead, Ellsworth did something that would become his signature for the next 37 years, something that would make him more feared than any killer, more respected than any saint. He gave them a choice. "Y'all got 2 options," he said. "Option 1, I use these 4 bullets. You join Ray on that floor. Your families wonder why you never came home." Tommy's breathing was a ragged whistle. Chains was crying openly now. "Option 2, Ellsworth continued. "Y'all forget you ever saw me. Forget Charleston. Forget the $500. Tell whoever sent you that Ellsworth Johnson is dead. Tell them you buried him yourself if you want. But the man who walked out of this room, his name is Bumpy Johnson, and Bumpy Johnson doesn't run from anybody." He tossed the gun onto the table. 4 bullets, 4 chances to shoot him in the back as he walked away, but they both knew those bullets would never be fired. Because what Ellsworth had just done wasn't about violence, it was about power, real power, the power to make men choose between their greed and their lives, the power to win without firing a shot, the power to walk away from a fight and leave your enemies grateful to be breathing. Ellsworth Johnson walked out of the Lenox Social Club at 6:41 a.m. on October 16, 1931. When the door closed behind him, that scared boy from Charleston was gone forever. The man who emerged into the morning light was something else entirely. something Harlem had never seen before, something that would reshape the underworld of New York City. They called him Bumpy because of the scar on his forehead, earned in a fight when he was 12, but the name fit for another reason, because everywhere Bumpy Johnson went, he left bumps. In the road, in the system, in the plans of men who thought they could control him. That hole in the wall? It's still there, painted over a dozen times, but still there. And sometimes, late at night, old-timers will point to it and tell their grandsons the story. The story of how a 17-year-old boy with $3.47 became the most feared man in Harlem, not because he was the strongest, not because he was the meanest, but because he understood something that would take the rest of the world 40 years to learn. The most dangerous weapon isn't the one that kills you, it's the one that makes you kill yourself. Ray Coltrane died by his friend's bullet. Chains Morrison spent the rest of his life jumping at shadows, knowing that somewhere in Harlem, Bumpy Johnson remembered his face. Tommy DeMarco left New York that same day and never returned, and that hole in the wall remained. A monument, a warning, a reminder that in Harlem, legends aren't born from violence. They're born from the wisdom to make violence unnecessary. October 16th, 1931, 6:41 a.m. The moment Bumpy Johnson stopped running from his past and started creating his future. 1 room, 3 men, 4 bullets, and 1 boy who understood that real power doesn't come from the gun in your hand. It comes from the fear in your enemy's heart.